Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall, who's up from some more Wi-Fi drama yet again tonight. It will get sorted. We're in the slow process of sorting it. I mean, even my camera sort of zoomed in more than usual, I feel like. You don't want to get too focused in on this nose. What we want to be focusing on is the AFC and the NFC East. Straight out of a cannon I am today, Sky. Full of beans. I'm ready to talk about two top divisions.
It's the perfect division to be full of beans for. There's a lot of drama, a lot of heated rivalry, and lots. I'm excited. I think, obviously these two divisions going against each other, they've both got tough schedules, right? But yeah, ready to talk through and talk up the Patriots as much as I can without looking too biased.
Is it nice, Johnny, this season that people look at the Jets, your team, and actually want to talk about them?
Absolutely. I mean, as a for over a decade, it just feels like all the attention is on our team, and that feels incredibly new, exciting. But I don't know. I'm always so pessimistic about my Jets, and until that, we see them on the field. I think last year there was a marker there. We just didn't have the quarterback. Now he's here. I just can't wait to see us play. Very excited to see that. But yeah, can't wait to get into some heated debate with Sky. Obviously, two big rivals in the AFC East. Maybe this year something can change.
Well, much like we annoyed Andrew probably last week was talking about Justin Fields, we'll be talking about his New York Giants as well. We're talking about the NFC East as well as Gareth, one of our main guys here as well, who's an Eagles fan. I mean, there's a lot to talk about his division. I think we'll start with the NFC East first because I feel like the heated debate of your AFC is going to probably take up a nice portion of this program. So we'll on the NFC East to begin with, and I'll do like I did last week. I'll let you guys choose who you want to start off with. I'll start with Johnny this week. Who would you like to start talking about in the NFC East?
Go on, I'll be the one to annoy Gareth. I'll go with the Eagles. Obviously, they are the team, the benchmark team in the NFC. After last year, getting to a Super Bowl, we know how good Jalen Hurts performed. It was so good to see him break out. I think in 2021 he showed signs of that, but he really came on leaps and bounds in 2022. Easily one of the he's been ranked in the top 10 players in the league. So yeah, I think it's just they're quietly going about their business. They've lost a few players, but replaced them with some incredible talent. The amount of depth in this roster, particularly on defense, is ridiculous. So like I mentioned, they've lost the likes of Edwards, White in the linebacker core, but Nakobe Dean, who I know was coming on leaps and bounds towards the end of last year. I'm hoping he can break out well. So yeah, I think this defense is a joke, and they're backed up with a really exciting offense with some superstars in Hurts, who I've mentioned, also AJ Brown. Can't wait to see DeAndre Swift in this offense. The offensive line as well. There's been some question marks, I think, this offseason, but in the media sort of hype, but I really can't see any sort of slip up compared to last year. So I think I'm expecting more of the same from the Eagles. Like I said, they're the benchmark team in the NFC. They've shown that they have the quality, the depth, and yeah, I'm fully expecting them to go on another run to maybe make the Super Bowl. I don't have much more to say, really.
It's mad to think that Jalen Hurts, when he got drafted, no one really saw him as he was going to be sort of what he has come today. And it just shows really, if you're patient with your quarterback and you give them the tools and you give them the opportunity to really shine in any team, that they can definitely take the opportunity. I think that's why that's sort of like the Pickett thing for me within the Steelers team. It just is a matter of time that I think there's certain quarterbacks in this league where the quarterback makes the team makes the quarterback. I don't know which one Jalen Hurts is yet. I don't think it maybe overly matters. It's just in my brain, that's how I like to see it. Are you the truck or the trailer? That's what the usual common one is are you a truck or a trailer?
Yeah.
So it'd be certainly interesting to see how the Eagles do fare up this year. I believe we've got Sky, or has Sky gone at walkies, or is he coming back to us? Let's get him back in.
I think there's just Wi-Fi issues all around London, aren't there? There's it's been kicked. Oh, here he is. Here he's back.
I've returned.
Okay, so
I had the issues today as well. Sorry.
backwards, but if he is, cool. You're back with us.
I'm here.
Smashing. Well, that was go on.
I was just going to say, Johnny talked up the Eagles so much that I felt it was my time to annoy Gareth some more and talk them down. But yeah, I don't think people have talked enough about last season, how easy the schedule was. And obviously this year now, in terms of the strength of schedule, they're playing the hardest win percentage of those in 2022, right? And I know the roster is stacked, but I think obviously defenses have more tape on them, more tape on the RPOs. I'm curious how the run game's going to do. And of course, they're the favourites. They're still probably top 3 Super Bowl favourite as well. But I don't think it's going to be as easy ride as it was last year.
I think it's something that everyone does forget is they did have what was seen as the easiest schedule. Again, NFL recency bias doesn't really think about that. I suppose no one does sort of talk upon that. So it will be certainly interesting to see this Eagle team this year. Moving on to you, Sky, who would you like to talk about to begin with? The Cowboys, the Giants, or then Washington Commanders?
I feel like you know who I'm going to say, right?
New York Giants, baby.
No, the Cowboys.
Oh, the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, yeah, I completely forgot. You are the number one Cowboys fan who supports New England Patriots.
Number one. Look, I've got my eyes blurred. My Romo jersey next to me, just for this moment to talk them up.
I had no clue you had a Tony Romo jersey.
I have a rule that if a player's retired, then and I liked them, then I'm allowed to have that jersey. If they play,
and you liked Tony Romo, or do you prefer him as a commentator?
I liked him as a player. I thought he was the epitome of live and die by the quarterback position, in the sense that when they were winning, he made all the hype, and when they lost, it all fell on him. Like that game where they lost to the Broncos was like 51-48, and he threw one pick but like 6 or 7 touchdowns. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's Romo's fault." I was like, "Hang on a minute." Yeah, but
that's quite a good rule to live by. I suppose.
Yeah,
throw that in the comments. I mean, how do people feel about having opposing teams' jerseys, even if you thought the player was legendary? As certain players, my partner's Vikings fan. She's got an Adrian Peterson jersey. I always think, Adrian Peterson, such an electric player. It'd be great to have. I've got a couple of bits and bobs of like from different teams of like memorabilia up above me, up on the top shelf there. But I don't have another team jersey. I've got some retired jerseys I'm not allowed to wear anymore. A certain 84 Antonio Brown Steelers jersey.
Yeah, I've got a Rams hat from years ago when they played in London. I can't even remember who they played. But they're old sort of style. They're old like logo design. I mean, now that their colour looks great, but I've got a sweater as well. I just like the Rams. They're the old Rams badge. So. Not to say that I love the Rams, but yeah. Anyway,
you kick us off with the Cowboys then, Sky.
So I think that obviously they ran the Eagles pretty close last season, right? And they've got their new offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, Kellen Moore is a great coordinator, but he clearly wanted to spread the ball around when he was at the Chargers. And I think that this approach now from the Cowboys is going to be more run heavy. People probably don't know much about Schottenheimer from recent years, but at the Jets, he was the offensive coordinator when they made the back-to-back title games. I think in 09 and 010, when there was Sean Green, the Danian Tomlinson, that run game. So he also had a decent stint at the Seahawks, and I think he can do some good work with Tony Pollard. Their defense for me is probably top 3. Dan Quinn, great coordinator. Trayvon Diggs, obviously, is exceptional at what he does. I know Parsons had injury scare the other day, but he's turned around and said that he isn't worried about it. They've got Van Der Esch, obviously, as well, who makes a big impact. And I think when I just alluded to the offense there, if they're not forcing to pass it all the time and can have a balanced offense with the likes of CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks now a member of the team. I think we've even seen Jalen Tolbert's made some plays in training camp. And Zach Martin has now finally agreed to not hold out. I'm not going to say they'll win the division. I still think the Eagles are the favourites, but I think with the talent the Cowboys have, anyone who's putting them below 10 wins is just silly. I think it's just people like to hate on the Cowboys, right? And it's just a case of, unless there are injuries, I don't see how this team gets less than 10 wins.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. I think obviously they're coming off the back of, is it 2 12-win seasons? So, they're in a good place. They're a good team. like I said, I think they've got possibly the best defense in the NFL. They've added to that this year. Love the look of this Maisie Smith, absolute unit on the defensive line. And if that gets any better, then the opposition offenses are in real trouble. So, yeah, I think it's a real bonus that they've kept hold of Dan Quinn. Very surprised that he hasn't got a head coaching yet. I think he's been in the sort of circle for the last couple of years, so that's positive. And yeah, very looking forward to seeing how their offense looks differently. I think hit the nail on the head. Not forcing the pass, and obviously how frustrating Dak is at times. And the pressure that Zeke probably had while he was there. Now he's gone. They can offload that elsewhere. So yeah, looking forward to seeing the Cowboys this year. They've got a really, really bright young up-and-coming team, so I think they'll do very well.
It's certainly interesting with the whole running back situation, because statistically last year when they run the ball more, they won. And when they did rely on that, they didn't win. And then that put obviously a lot of question marks over his big contract that he got given, which people then started, getting, probably breaking it down quite a lot because of that happening. So it's going to be a certain interesting team, especially without Zeke. I think it really does show when it feels like maybe they were beholden to him at some given point, and now now he's got he's out of the picture. Maybe there will be a little bit less noise around the building in regards to Zeke, because we know what Tony Pollard can do. It's just whether he can do it on a consistent basis rather than these short bursts of which he was doing most of the season, most of the other seasons that he's played for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's move back to you, Johnny. Would you like to take the Giants or the Commanders?
I'll take the Commanders, actually, because there's been obviously a lot of noise about them this off-season. I think in sport, we see it a lot in football in this country, where there's a team struggling off the field or is making headlines off the field, then more times than not, that team will, likely regress or perform a lesser sort of standard on the field. So now that all that drama over the Dan Snyder ownership has been put to bed, and there's all a lot of excitement around this training camp, I think the Commanders can produce a football team that the town and the fans can be proud of. There's obviously a lot of question marks on the roster, and Sam Howell, the quarterback, is very unknown, and we've seen glimpses of him in training camp, perhaps not looking as sharp as everyone would have wanted him to. But I do think we look through these things through a very biased media sort of lens that's trying to either make a scapegoat or progress out. So I don't buy into any of that. I'm just really looking forward to seeing how they get on with obviously Eric Bieniemy coming in as well. There's their offensive coordinator. That could be a real master stroke if he can bring what he did in Kansas City to Washington. Obviously, it's a real challenge for him, breaking out the limelight of Andy Reid and Mahomes. But yeah, he's been touted as a future head coach for so long. I wonder if there's a plan in place in Washington. If Bieniemy can help to transform this offense, then maybe he will be the man at the helm in a few years' time. There's obviously been a lot of pressure on Ron Rivera during the Schneider era. I think this year it's all about, it's difficult because there are so many great players, I think, on this team. So many young players and players who expect to be part of a really winning franchise, and they're probably the weakest team. I'd probably say they're the weakest team. It's difficult to say, but in terms of looking back from last year, they finished bottom of the NFC East. So yeah, a real work in progress. But yeah, heading into a bit of an unknown. But I'm more positive than negative about the chances this year.
It's sort of in the same position we were talking about with the Packers last week, where we'll put our guy in, and if it happens, then bully for us. But if we don't, there's two great quarterbacks coming out in this draft. And that now you've said about Bieniemy and maybe this path. I mean, Sky, do you reckon there is any chance that Commanders have a poor season? They go into the NFL draft with having a top pick. They could take either of these two quarterbacks coming out of college who look like real promising prospects. Rivera steps away. Bieniemy becomes the head coach. He gets this quarterback of the future. Bieniemy's already had a fantastic history with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Could you see that being a line of thinking within the Commanders organization?
Yeah, I think unfortunately for Commanders fans, if the start of the season doesn't go according to plan, there's going to be the murmurs of tanking, right? And if you can get Caleb Williams with Eric Bieniemy, that's a pretty good duo. I mean, even if it was a case of, okay, let's give Rivera another season, and then, like Johnny said, there's a plan in place even for 1 or 2 years to have your own quarterback over a veteran head coach and then make that transition. I think that could work quite nicely. Also, of course, they got Jacoby Brissett as their backup as well. He's a good backup. So, of course, like any team, I don't really buy into teams actually tanking, because considering how big their NFL rosters are, there's obviously people there 1-year deals fighting for their NFL careers. But naturally, there might be some hope come halfway through the season from the new owners that they do end up with one of the top two quarterbacks going into next year's draft. But it's an exciting time for them, as Johnny said. You've got Magic Johnson and that sort of business ownership, and looks like they might also have another name change on the horizon. If you read what I read yesterday, could be back to the Redskins or another one that's being reviewed apparently in January. So might not be the Commanders anymore.
That's all they need is another name change. I mean, I'd say they need a bit more than just a name change to turn this team around, but it was certainly interesting to see what happens. So moving back on to Johnny, I suppose, talking about the Andrew's New York Giants, which I'm sure he's going to be listening to this and with much intrigue about how we feel about them. Sorry, in fact, it was Sky's turn, isn't it? It's not Sky. Yeah, it's Sky's turn. Sky's turn to talk about Giants. Sure,
to be
Johnny,
horrible about the
you
Giants.
speak now. It's time for you to be quiet. You can be horrible about the Giants. That's going to be the role that you take on this one, then, yeah?
Yeah, happy to do. I think, the NFC East has had, it's one of the divisions where you don't get consistent winners, right? The last 3 years have had 3 different teams win it. Seen people trying to make a case to say, could the Giants be, 4th different team in 4 years? I don't particularly see. And I think, again, this leans into the fact that the Giants and Cowboys are tied for the 4th hardest schedule now. Obviously, you can look at Dallas's roster and make a case for them to deal with that because of the talent they have on both sides of the ball. I just think that, is Daniel Jones a franchise quarterback? I don't want to be too harsh on him because of what he did without the weapons. That they didn't have any weapons and they still made the playoffs. So you have to give credit. But I'm not particularly sold on the signing of Darren Waller, which is going to be another controversial thing because he's had injury problems as a Raider. I like Jalen Hyatt. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Hopefully he recovers well after the injury he had. I like Brian Daboll as well. But I just think that they're in a tough division, arguably the toughest. We know that the New York media is the worst. I mean, as Johnny knows, being a Jets fan, like if it doesn't go well, everyone's on your back. And if they don't make the playoffs again, even though why should they? Because obviously they're still building towards the future. People will start talking and they'll still have that Saquon Barkley drama again, next year with the franchise tag. So I'm not saying they're going to be completely awful. I just think that people need to temper their expectations a bit for them this season.
Yeah, because he only signed a 1-year deal, which is obviously quite strange because we were thinking he's going to get a big deal here. They have to pay him almost because he is such a key figure for this Giants team, but he's only taking a 1-year deal. So of course, as soon as a string of losses happen, that's going to have a detrimental effect to the team in terms of the media definitely attacking that point. I think we know what we're sort of getting with this Giants team, aren't we, Johnny? We're going to get a good. I feel like we know already their defense is pretty good. It's now just a question mark over this offense, and like Sky alluded to, it is hard to criticize Daniel Jones when he didn't have any help last season. He's got a few weapons in now. Waller being the one that stands out, I suppose. Do you think he is capable of putting a string of wins together? And is this a bit of a make or break year for him? Because I argued it was make or break last year, and I feel he was just on the right side of make rather than break.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Giants, surprised everyone about how competitive they were, given how many holes they had. Apparently, their offense was fairly explosive at times. But yeah, I know Sky's been critical of Daniel Jones in the past, and I buy that. I don't know. Brian Dable was able to get something out of him last year, which I don't think we'd seen on a consistent basis. I don't put him anywhere near like the top 10 quarterbacks or the top 15, and so maybe stick into there, but in the league. But he was competent enough to get the Giants into the playoffs. But whether or not they can keep it up is another question. We've said how difficult this division is. It's possibly the hardest in football, and given the schedule, if injury starts, they've got holes. I think in the secondary. I'm hoping the pass rush can step out. Let's see. Obviously, we saw Kayvon Thibodeau. Look apart. He needs to step up a gear this year. Darren Waller as well, obviously a huge addition, but he's had injury concerns the last couple of years. If they lose him, then they're really struggling out wide for pass catches. And it's a really interesting one because how well they did last year and Dable and managing those sort of expectations of where to come. But if they can stay competitive, stay in games. I'm just looking at the schedule now, and I can't work out whether or not they'll have a really, really tricky year, or they'll be able to stay in games and hopefully get them towards 500 or above. I think it's all about managing expectations in New York, but we'll see.
Yeah, and it's been proven around the league that you can win and go very far with just a competent quarterback in place. If you look at San Francisco and they had Jimmy G under center, I mean, if you have a good defense and a competent quarterback and a few weapons, you can go far. Like I said, Jimmy G, he had Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, no McCaffrey at the time, but every running back they had loads of injuries there. Every single one sort of stepped up and did really well. So if the Giants can have a really strong defense and now get some of these weapons developed, being competent at the quarterback position is just enough to take you on a good run. And you need to ride your luck a little bit, having a really strong schedule. The run of luck that you want to have. But it's definitely something that they're going to want to build on. I think it's a bit of a win-win for the Giants. If they do really well, they go on a good run again. If they don't, they might be in a prime position to get one of these quarterbacks or a high-end player coming out of next year's draft. That's all for the NFC. We'll now go on to the AFC East. Obviously, you two are going to be very, very pleased about chatting about this. Obviously, we're going to go to Johnny first, and obviously he's going to want to talk about his New York Jets. I feel like I'm just going to give you that one already, Johnny, straight up. I feel like it'd be unfair if I said Sky can talk about Jets and Johnny's going to talk about the Pats, and there could be some real controversy there. But I'll let you chat about the Jets to begin with. Of course, a Jets team that we're all getting to know very well on Hard Knocks as well.
Yeah, I mean, what an off-season it's been. The Jets have been the center of attention in the NFL for the last, it feels, 5-6 months, purely because of, Aaron Rodgers, his trade, and what, the expectation and how that'll transform the franchise. We know all about the difficulty at quarterback last year and how well the defense performed. They've got better this offseason. And now with Rodgers and the pull that he has to, bring in new players like Alan Lazard, Dalvin Cook this week. We've got players coming back from injury. Yeah, it's really, really exciting. I can't wait for the season to get started because, there's been so much excitement, expectation. Just trying to manage that, I think, one of my big things is about how we perform in the division, and really big question mark is getting those wins over the Patriots. What is it, 15-16 losing streak now? Last year's games, if we won both of those games, it could have been in the playoffs, and they were easily winnable if we had someone like Aaron Rodgers under center. So yeah, I'm really excited. We've got a tough start to the year, but down the stretch, you could be talking. I'm looking at the teams that we go through, and we could easily get eight wins in a row if we're going by those sort of predictions, expectations. Really, really excited. I'm really excited about some of the other new players, not just Rodgers. Will McDonald was a questionable signing, I think, in the draft for many people, but he already looks, a real stud, a bit undersized, but I'm hoping this year he can, develop. Jermaine Johnson, who we drafted in the first round last year, who had a bit of a quiet rookie year, has come out and looks to be one of our premium pass rushers this year. So we're expecting big things from him. The offensive line needs to stay healthy. I think that's the really big question mark about this team is we still don't know who's going to play there. There's talk around Jets fans around perhaps Elijah Vera Tucker moving to right tackle. We signed Joe Tippmann in the draft. He's a center, but could be moved to guard to work around some of the holes that we have. Mekhi Becton is a bit of a wild card this year. He, his rookie year showed just how good of a player he was, but he just can't stay healthy. So, yes, I feel like I've just splurted everything out there of how I'm feeling. I'm excited, but I think the first game we'll know whether or not this team's going to be exactly how people are viewing us in preseason. But yeah, should be a great year in New York.
And if you want to hear more in depth about New York Jets with Johnny, he has released a video with us, the franchise tag. It is on YouTube now. So for you Jets fans, and for probably maybe some people in the AFC East who want to get Johnny's opinion on how the Jets will look this year, make sure you go check that out as well. One thing is becoming very apparent, Sky, when I watched Hard Knocks straight away, I really think Sauce Gardner could be the best corner in the league this year.
Yeah,
I think he is so good. And I think Garrett Wilson is absolutely fell on his feet. That he has the talent that he has already, and he's going up. He plays every day against the best cornerback, potentially going to be the best cornerback in the NFL. How much he's going to learn from that. And also the relationship they have with each other with that. It is, though competitive, you can tell, it is very much an education between them. They seem to be like great friends. They seem to be talking after every play about how to get better and how to be better and building their own game. I mean, I watched it thinking like, wow, if these two players can really become what they, if they hit their top marks and their elite level, the Jets have got ballers on both sides of the ball at both a great age.
Yeah, I can't believe. I can't really think of any teams, who can say that after a rookie season, right? From to have potentially star receiver and corner, the way we can see that so early. And like you said, I think it's a good sign to see that a lot of young players come with an ego out of college, right? I'm sure with the thing of the draft of where they were picked and, just noise, maybe you believe your own hype too much, but they seem very grounded, level-headed, and a lot of talent. And yeah, even as a Patriots fan watching it, it was like kind of nice to see that, these guys seem to want to master their craft. Like you said, they're talking about how they can better each other because they know that throughout the season, or the work they put in now is going to help because they're going to be coming up. How many better corners is Garrett Wilson going to come up against? And how many better receivers is Sauce going to come up against? So that's going to bode well for both of them. And yeah, I'm sure everyone's expecting me to probably talk badly about the Jets, but I think, obviously they haven't won it since 2002, and that's not a dig. I think it just, the hype is justified, and it's not just for the sake of it. If they can get to week 7 at least at 500, I think they get at least 10 wins. From week 12 onwards, they're playing the Falcons, the Texans, Commanders, and Browns. I think all 4 of those teams are unknown commodities. And I think their hardest game from week 10 onwards is in Buffalo, which is, everyone knows that probably most years anyway, because it's a division rival. So, I think Jets fans can probably at least expect 10 wins and a playoff spot, and then anything can happen there. But of course, we know Tom Brady moved teams during COVID and still managed to win a home Super Bowl. So if Rodgers doesn't win it, then that's another thing against him in the GOAT discussion. So no pressure.
Well, speaking of home of Tom Brady, former homes of Tom Brady, are we going to get a Mac attack out of Boston, Massachusetts this year? What are we going to be expecting from this New England Patriots team, Sky? I've just signed Ezekiel Elliott in the last few days.
Yeah.
Some interesting off-season acquisitions as well. How are you feeling about this Pats team?
I think I'm feeling well. I haven't got my Matt Jones jersey on. I've gone for Teddy Bruschi. I don't know if you can tell from the number from here. I've gone retro when it was the good days. But even at my most pessimistic, I still think this Patriots team, with having Bill Belichick and the defense we have, will get 7 wins. I know 7 wins is not a playoff spot, but considering the way some people talk about the Patriots, I guess it's similar to Steelers for you last year. People don't talk enough about how much the head coach makes a big impact, right? I think in a division, we know that, as Johnny mentioned about the streak of beating the Jets, Belichick always has a game plan. Even Mahomes and the quarterback show spoke about Belichick changing his defense every time. So in divisional games, he's doing that. And when we've got the likes of Josh Uche, Bentley at linebacker, Christian Gonzalez has just been drafted. I mean, we're adding one of the top corners coming out of college to a secondary that already has Jack and Jonathan Jones, who both have very good seasons. Finally have an offensive coordinator and not Matt Patricia. So that's nice. And I think, it will be interesting to see how the likes of Butte, the rookie, does. Thornton has a lot of speed. Mike Gesicki's come over from Miami, so could potentially have that 2 tight end set with Hunter Henry. And like you mentioned about the run game, Stevenson and Zeke Elliott. Of course, I'm not going to be deluded and think that the Patriots are going to get even a playoff spot, but I just think anywhere from 7-10 to about 9-8 is more than possible with Belichick as your head coach.
And much like Bill Belichick taking Nike to the draft with him, his dog Sky brings his cat along to do the podcasting as well. I mean, there's the similarities are so. I mean, you are more cheerful. Admittedly, you are a lot more a happier guy. The Pats. The Pats are a team that I think. Yeah, you're very right. Much like the Steelers can be really wrote off sometimes. And you're like, hang on a minute, but it's Bill Belichick's best coach of all time. Has to count for something in this game. What are you thinking about the Patriots, Johnny? Is it two easy wins for you this year?
Actually, I'm probably more positive on the Patriots this year than I was last year. Even with Max and Bill's struggles or so-called struggles last year, I think it was probably fairly obvious that Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, leading the offense last year probably wasn't going to work. So look forward to seeing what Bill O'Brien can do, and hopefully he can get Mac back on track. And I think that the new additions, Juju, Mike Gesicki, so I think there's a lot to be decide for in this roster. Some good options, obviously Zeke as well. That little bit of excitement for the Pats that side. Christian Gonzalez already looks a real stud, and adds to an already class secondary. I know they've lost a couple of players with the retirement of Devin McCourty this off season, but they've got some great options there. Matt Judon as well, absolute superstar on that pass rush. So the players are there. It's just difficult with the teams that they have around them, and if you compare the quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, to an extent, they're all, I would say, an upgrade on Mac Jones. But I think last year was difficult. But I'm sure they can bounce back with Belichick at the helm. All this talk of him on the hot seat, I completely get. But he's the best coach of all time. And if anyone's going to get anything out of this team, then of course it's going to be him.
Back on to you, Johnny. Would you like to talk about the Miami Dolphins or the Buffalo Bills?
I'll talk about the Bills because I think the last season coming into the year, they were the Super Bowl favourites. We saw how dominant they were on the opening game of last year against the Rams. And this year there have been, I suppose, a few question marks over them, not necessarily because a team like the Jets have improved, the Dolphins are continuing to recruit and get better. I think the their defeat to the Bengals last year really hurt them. And you could visibly see that, obviously, with Stephon Diggs's, the camera, catching him and Josh Allen having a bit of a spat, and that's perhaps spilled onto this season. He seemed clearly unsettled going into camp. Whether or not he's going to be the same player, you hope so. You have so much expectations on these teams, on this team, I think they're just in a slightly different place than they were last year, which perhaps could be a good thing because, I think we like to put a team ahead of the Super Bowl winners, as going into a new year. The Bills were probably that team last year. Maybe the Jets are this year if I'm bigging them up too much. But yeah, they've made some good additions. Dalton Kincaid's a player I'm really looking forward to seeing. We've heard about all the Travis Kelce comparisons. Not necessarily a great blocker, but they've got a decent offensive line. He could really add another dimension to the pass game. They've also improved the run game as well. And on defense, I'm just hoping that Von Miller can stay healthy. We know what the defensive line can do. And if you have Von Miller at his prime, healthy, raring to go, then that's a really scary thing to be facing. So yeah, I'm expecting the Bills obviously to make the playoffs. They're probably probably still the favourites, I'd say, for the division, because they are the team to beat because they've been very dominant the last couple of years. But yeah, it's just a few question marks at this stage, but perhaps I'm looking into it a bit much. It's probably not one to worry about too much. I've got Josh Allen, who's a roller coaster ride, and I'm sure he'll take very deep in the playoffs once again.
Well, yeah, when I went to Miami against the Bills, when I was in Miami, the Dolphins were playing really well. But all you kept hearing and saying was like, yeah, they've got Josh Allen. Like, he's done this so many times to us already. But the Super Bowl window every year for every team just gets... I feel like they really boomed, 4 years ago, and the window gets smaller and smaller and smaller, unfortunately. And it's a little bit the last 2 years I've been like ride or die with the Bills. I think the Bills are going to win it. Like, I think they're that good. And I was really convinced last year they would. And then it just seemed to fall at the hurdle every time. And they lose needless games as well in the season. They give away a couple of games a year, and they don't need to. And they've been rode to the limit in a lot of these games. I just worry is the window nearly closed, But the problem is, like you said, they've got Josh Allen. You cannot write off Josh Allen. That's the problem. He's such a capable quarterback. He's top 3 quarterback in the league, in my estimation. Anyway, I know a few people I know personally don't agree with me, but I really do root for this Bills team every year, and it seems like such a shame for how good they've been, but they've not done it just yet. Maybe this will be the year. Only time can tell. We'll move back on Sky to talk about the Dolphins to close out the show. And all I can think of when I think of the Dolphins is just this explosive offense.
Oh, you didn't set me up. As in, you set me up thinking I was going to talk them up. I don't know how explosive this offense is going to be. Like, everyone's talking up, the Dolphins. I don't like to keep talking about Tua's injury. Because no one wanted it was horrible to see, right? The talk of the multiple concussions, etc. But I think it just goes to show that they're not prepared if they do lose him at the quarterback position, and there's question marks over him anyway as a starter. I know they've got Tyreek Hill, I know they've got Waddle, but I still think there's question marks on the run game. Dalvin Cook was touted as going there, and he's gone to the Jets. I just think that if any of the 4 teams in the AFC East were to be hit by injuries, I think Miami would be the ones who would suffer the most. I just don't see the depth across there that helps. And that mainly ties into the fact that they've got the second hardest schedule. Now, I know all of these teams that we're talking about are in the top 8. But I think them being at number 2, again, just highlights that they need to be healthy. And they remind me of the sort of a team where, you get those teams like we had the Vikings last year who are winning those 1-score games, and the Lions turn those things around. I think you can even go the Falcons way from years ago with Mike Smith, and you're losing those close games, or you could be like the Vikings were last year. And I just see the Dolphins being competitive, but probably losing more than people make out. And I can, even with their schedule, I mean, they play the Eagles, Patriots, and Chiefs before their Week 10 bye. And they've also got the Jets, Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills to end the season. And Miami's not a place where it's a Buffalo and it's cold. People don't mind going to Miami at the end of the year, unless you're the Patriots.
Man, when I was in Miami, it was against Buffalo. It was like 38 degrees, and people want to go. Buffalo were like, "Wow, this is insane how hot it is." So It might not be the cold weather thing, but like it's certainly humid. I mean, I suppose that's like if you're going later in the year, though. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the Patriots managed to, even in Super Bowl winning seasons, lose there. It's just like a curse or something. But I think a lot of teams embrace, it's Miami, sunshine, they want to play there. I mean, they've not won the division since 2008, only because we had Matt Castle and still managed to almost beat them to it. So I just basically have a lot of pessimism around this Dolphins team, and they're the team that I would probably put at around a 7-10, and maybe ends up going below the expectations. But let's see.
Very interesting. It seems we've got like a couple of minutes left, Johnny. You can put your 5 pence in about the Dolphins as well. Are you just pessimistic?
Yeah, no, I'm probably a little bit more positive about the Dolphins just because of how much I enjoyed watching them at times last year, and they're acting like they're in that sort of entering that window with the signings that they've made. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey, unfortunately, he's injured for most of the year, but Bradley Chubb, who they brought in last year, they were building around that Tyreek Hill. Who can forget about him? They've got absolute superstars across the roster. Vic Fangio coming in as well as the new defensive coordinator. Hopefully,
isn't Ramsey missing quite a lot of time?
Yeah, I think he's out until December.
So
I'm not sure he'll play as much of a big part this year, which is obviously a huge loss for the Dolphins secondary. But yeah, I think like I said, Vic Fangio hopefully can bring this into more the unit rather than stars. I'm really looking forward to see how Jalen Phillips he sort of broke out at the end of last year. I'm convinced he's going to join the elite rushers in the league this year. He just looks like such a beast, and him alongside Chubb. Yeah, they're going to have a really good pass rush if Fangio can join it all together and fire them all on all cylinders, because I think that's one of that's going to keep them in games, particularly if Tua can't stay healthy, which would be such a shame because we really still haven't seen the full Tua a full season of Tua in this offense. So yeah, I think it's obviously going to be difficult with the schedule. They just, it's all about just staying healthy. And if they can, then that's a huge positive. And I can see them, being, a bit nearer to that 9-10 win category if they, can pick up some divisional victories along the way.
Brilliant. Well, fantastic. That was the AFC East and the NFC East. We've got more shows coming weekly with the divisions. We've still got 2 more weeks, 2 more. Got the West and the South to talk about. I feel like the South is probably going to be a poorly viewed episode.
No.
Sorry, NFC South and AFC South. AFC South, maybe not NFC South.
We'll talk it up.
Yeah,
bad football down there. I'm going to just
franchise quarterbacks, new rookies.
Yeah.
Okay. Johnny, thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. We've got our betting show coming back very soon. I believe it's coming back this weekend, or at least we're recording it this weekend. So that'll be coming up very soon for you to put your preseason bets on, where you think what the odds are for divisional winners, for who's going to get to the playoffs, for winning percentages as well. We also got the fantasy show starting back up again. I believe our first episode will probably be the live one of us doing our live draft in the franchise tag fantasy league. That will certainly be incredibly chaotic, and long as well. So we'll probably chop that up a little bit, but it would be a lot of fun anyway. But thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week.